You're watching E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Share and subscribe.
So I don't know how much you guys remember the first version of this, but this one's pretty long. It's 5 pages now, almost 3,000 words. Because I kept mostly everything from the first version, and then of course I added in some stuff. So here we go. Godzilla vs. Kong, speculation 1.5. Madison comes home upset because she is being harassed at school. Still struggling over the death of her mother, Mark tries to console her. She also misses being around the Titans as she used to be with her mom. Mark has relocated to a remote area in Alaska, as far from the Titans as possible. It was funded by Monarch for his services during the battle between Godzilla and Ghidorah and the Titan Awakening. Monarch has sent most of their top scientists to Skull Island to observe the mass movement of Titans to the island. There is also an underground facility on Skull Island where Dr. Brooks has been stationed for some time, with the exception of the time he left to assist Monarch with the mass awakening. Monarch scientists at Skull Island have been working for years on a project to assist in defending against the Titans should they turn on humanity. But the project has been shut down since Godzilla's victory and the Titans traveling to Skull Island. Dr. Brooks has since put his efforts back into the Hollow Earth, and together with Dr. Chen, he has discovered that the Hollow Earth network is not only like an organic wormhole of some sort, but in which Titans travel, but there are certain pockets where water does not exist, and that Titans can actually live there. He suggests that there could be even more Titans, as evidenced by the discovery of other skull crawlers who surfaced when Ghidorah made his call. This new facility also houses an unhatched Mothra egg for incubation. Dr. Chen, too, I put him 1 and 2. Dr. Chen, too, often visits the incubation cell. She can be seen spending a lot of time in there, in silence, appearing to pray for long periods of time. The new Monarch facility also houses its best security measures yet, after finding out the government in the last year has invested millions of dollars to hire and fully fund the eco-terrorist organization that is led by Alan Jonah. The government has classified this as a black ops project not to be known to the public, and have set the task for the now known Apex to destroy all monsters by any means necessary. However, Alan Jonah has other plans. They are also tracking all the Titans as they are also heading to Skull Island. Dr. Brooks has a conversation with Mark via satellite call, telling him about the Hollow Earth theory and that he believes that a much larger and more powerful skullcrawler lays dormant underneath the island, and that he believes Lieutenant Hank Marlowe may have been wrong about the skullcrawler that Kong defeated in the 70s being the last and bigger of the bunch. Dr. Brooks believes that this skullcrawler may be what is attracting the Titans, as it poses a threat to the natural order, and that Godzilla, as the new Alpha, has in a sense put out a call to action, since Godzilla knows other creatures are on the island, and he would need the other Titans to run interference, so to speak. He insists that he needs Mark's help and summons him to Skull Island. Madison tags along as Mark refuses to leave her on her own due to her current issues and feels being around the familiar territory could be good for her. Mark takes in the new security measures. Team G has been shored up with new members. The Argo has new weaponry that is also effective against Titans should they need it. The Argo also has a new state-of-the-art reconnaissance craft, the first of its kind, capable of stealth, long-range scanning, and radar, and ultimate shielding for self-sustenance, as well as cadmium missiles to combat the Titans' radioactive effects as to accelerate the opportunity for humans to repopulate an area and benefit from the positive effects of the Titans' radiation to the surrounding region. The new craft has not been given a designation yet, so it has adopted its prototype name Super X. I did that for you guys, by the way, for you Super X fans out there. The Titans begin to make landfall, and everyone in the facility begin to observe and are on high alert. Behemoth Titan makes landfall, and upon its arrival, other small creatures begin to flee. As it gets further into the island, you hear a loud, familiar roar of Kong. Leaping out from the forest and out in the open arrives Kong, clearly much larger than we remember, but also still much smaller than the behemoth. Kong and the behemoth begin to charge each other, and the behemoth launches Kong several hundred yards away with the side of his tusk, very similar to a shoulder tackle. Kong gets up and realizes he can't outmuscle the behemoth. He picks up a boulder and chucks it at the behemoth, but behemoth knocks it away with his tusk. Kong then utilizes his speed to jump on the behemoth's back and begins to ground and pound, laying punches on his side and head. The multiple bludgeons bring the behemoth down a peg to what would be his knees. Kong grabs one of the tusks and bends it, and the behemoth's head so far back the large tusk breaks off. Kong stands on the behemoth's back, and just then we hear Godzilla's roar. Kong's facial expression indicates he recognizes the roar and jumps off the behemoth, and the behemoth begins to slog away, heading for the water. Godzilla appears, and him and Kong face off. Kong beats his chest and roars. Godzilla begins flashing his dorsal plates and roars. Kong then charges Godzilla, and they are in what is similar to a wrestling lock. Hands on each other's shoulders, doing a sort of tug of war. Godzilla lunges and bites down on Kong's shoulder, and Kong screams in pain. Just then, Godzilla spins around and catches Kong with a tail whip, launching Kong back. Kong is on the floor and slowly begins to get up as Godzilla revs up for an atomic blast. Just then, Kong grabs a tree and tosses it in Godzilla's mouth just before he fires the blast, stunning Godzilla as the base of the tree catches Godzilla's throat. Kong lunges, grabs the tree, and keeps it in Godzilla's mouth, forcing him to the ground. Kong begins to ground and pound Godzilla on the chest. Just then, Godzilla inhales atomic breath, burning the tree, then exposes it, burning Kong's hands through an atomic pulse. Kong backs up in pain, and Godzilla shoots a much less powerful but faster, less telegraphed, and still effective atomic blast, hitting Kong in the chest. Kong's chest burns and gets smoky, and before Godzilla can continue, Kong leaps into the forest and retreats. Godzilla begins to drink some water, in which can be seen as him soothing his throat. The rest of the Titans arrive and begin to make the island their new habitat. Godzilla continues to stay close to the coast. We later see Kong in solitude grabbing leaves and herbs, crushing them down and placing them on his wounds. Just then, a large quake hits the island, and a large sinkhole opens up near Kong. He investigates it, and an expression of concern is seen on his face. Back at Monarch, the base is under attack. The Argo and the Super X were out gathering intel on Skull Island and begin to make their way back to the base. However, the base is overrun as Apex just has more troops than Monarch. Forced to retreat, Dr. Chen releases the Mothra egg via a hatch in the chamber, and the egg falls into the ocean off the coast of Skull Island near Godzilla's last location. With no indication of hatching, the egg is in immediate danger as a giant Mother Longlegs begins to try and breach the egg. Just shortly after that siege, the water begins to recede, catching the attention of the giant spider. From the ocean comes Godzilla, and he roars, catching the attention of the spider, who immediately goes on the offensive. Godzilla makes short work of the spider as he grabs it by the front two pincers and burns off its face with an atomic blast. Godzilla begins to pack the egg under the sand and proceeds further into the island. Apex begins to hack into all the terminals at the facility and send out a crew to recapture the Mothra egg. Alan Jonah finds the plans to a project called Project Guardian. He is aware of the plan and wanted to steal them so he could modify it to capture or kill Titans. The project consists of a biomechanical Titan with the Orca design built in. Alan Jonah reveals that he plans to also include the specifications of the oxygen destroyer so that any Titans he cannot capture, he can kill, specifically Godzilla. Jonah leaves the facility to head back to his base with the plans, and we don't see him for the rest of the movie. Back with Kong, as he is scouting the Titans, it is learned that Kong is not happy with the hostile takeover, but realizes fighting each Titan is a waste of his energy and that he only needs to defeat Godzilla to rid the island of its unwelcome guest. Kong finally sees Godzilla on the coast drinking water and eating loads of fish in one swoop with his mouth. Keeping his distance and waiting for Godzilla to get closer, he waits quietly and patiently in the trees. As Godzilla moves closer, he sniffs out Kong, but it's too late, as Kong jumps on his back and takes a clean shot at Godzilla's head, knocking Godzilla down. He then bites and rips off one of Godzilla's dorsal plates. He grabs Godzilla by the tail and flings him into the dense forest where there are large trees. Kong takes cover in the trees and utilizes his speed to make strike attacks on Godzilla, confusing and hurting Godzilla. Godzilla begins to burn down the forest in an attempt to cut down on the stealth attacks. This works as Kong is angered by Godzilla destroying the forest, and he makes the mistake again of taking Godzilla head on. The two go at it in a violent brawl that brings down trees. Kong's rage, combined with Godzilla being weak by the surprise attack, forces Godzilla to retreat into the ocean. Kong has won this round. We cut to Godzilla in the ocean, and he is slowly regenerating his plate. Still staying close to the coast where he buried the Mothra egg, we see Godzilla wake up as he senses danger. The Titan Skyla begins to attack Godzilla. It is learned that after the loss to Kong, the Titans are beginning to sense Godzilla as weak and are now challenging him. Skyla begins to wrap his mouth tentacles around Godzilla's throat. While holding Godzilla underwater, Skyla begins to puncture Godzilla while squeezing the life out of him. Godzilla, getting enraged, grabs the base of Skyla's tentacles and rips them right out. Freeing him, Godzilla brings Skyla to the surface, where he begins to use Skyla as an example to the other Titans. He breaks off several of Skyla's limbs, and while Skyla lays there, Godzilla revs up a powerful atomic blast, utterly incinerating Skyla, and regains control of order. Kong witnesses this battle and realizes if he can beat Godzilla again, the Titans may just finish him off and eventually leave without any Alpha to guide them. More earthquakes hit the island and a volcano erupts. The humans are staying away now and have been in idle position as Godzilla has stayed too close to where Mothra's egg is in an attempt to guard it. This has left the humans at a distance as well as the remaining Apex troops attempting to capture the egg. Both in idle position but ready to fight over the egg when an opening happens. Mark Russell believes that they should leave and allow things to happen naturally, and that the Apex troops have no chance of getting the egg with Kong and Godzilla in the surrounding area. Godzilla finally emerges from the sea fully healed and makes landfall. Knowing that something is wrong on the island, he begins to head inland. Just then, Kong once again leaps out from the forest, but this time Godzilla is prepared. Godzilla catches Kong in mid-flight with a devastating tail whip that knocks the wind out of Kong. Godzilla grabs Kong's leg with his mouth and bites down hard and drags him out into the open to keep him away from the forest and any more sneak attacks. Kong tries to get Godzilla's vice grip off his leg, but Godzilla is all in. Kong desperately gives Godzilla a solid punch to the snout, stunning Godzilla as he falls back. Kong tackles Godzilla to the floor and gives him several hard punches to the face and one solid punch to the throat. Godzilla wrestles Kong off of him and gets to his feet. Just then, Kong jumps on Godzilla's back again, looking to rip another dorsal plate, but this time Godzilla sends a surge up his back that burns Kong's hands. While this is happening, a firefight breaks out on the beach as the terrorists and Monarch try to retrieve the egg. The Chen sisters begin to hum a hymn, and the egg begins to hatch. Back to the fight, Godzilla finally has the upper hand and begins to pound on Kong, shoving his head into the larger boulder. Kong is on the ground looking exhausted. Godzilla places his foot on Kong's chest and begins to charge up a large atomic breath, and just then a large sinkhole opens up and smoke and some molten lava begins to seep out. Out comes a huge skull crawler, a much evolved one with 4 legs instead of 2. Godzilla begins to back off of Kong and sets his sights on the Skullcrawler, which is larger than Godzilla. The Skullcrawler lunges at Godzilla and wraps his large and long tail around his body, constricting him. It begins to bite down around Godzilla's neck and chest, drawing blood and injuring Godzilla. The Skullcrawler begins to ascend his head, looking right down at Godzilla, opening his mouth large, and it expands and a second mouth is revealed, much like Alien. And just as it's about to deliver the finishing blow, Kong swings in off a nearby branch and kicks the Skullcrawler, freeing Godzilla. The meta Skullcrawler is knocked to the ground. Godzilla gets up and peers at Kong as Kong peers back. They growl at each other. Kong beats his chest and Godzilla roars. Godzilla surges atomic breath up his back and sizes up Kong. They're about to go at it again and finish their fight. Just then, they both turn and charge the Skullcrawler as the Skullcrawler charges back and an epic battle ensues. Godzilla tanking the Skullcrawler while Kong uses his speed to deliver quick and decisive blows. But the Skullcrawler successfully fights them both off. Just then, the remaining Titans scatter about the island begin to converge toward the fight. The Mothra egg finally hatches and triplets are revealed. They begin to head toward the fight. Godzilla and Kong are struggling and losing the fight, and the Skullcrawler is about to finish them both, when suddenly a line of silk begins to fly through the air and land on the Skullcrawler just as it's about to attack. The Skullcrawler turns its attention to a Mothra larva hiding behind a rock. Just as it's about to attack, another line of silk flies from a different direction, and suddenly the triplets are beginning to bind the Skullcrawler from all directions. The rest of the Titans arrive, and Godzilla, Kong, and all the Titans begin taking free shots on the Skullcrawler. Finally, Godzilla stands in front of the bound meta Skullcrawler. Kong then grabs the Skullcrawler by the mouth and begins to pry open its jaw. Just as he's doing that, Godzilla blasts a line of atomic breath down its throat, ripping the head off. Kong, with the head in his hand, tosses it in the ocean. The monsters go their separate ways, and Godzilla and Kong stare each other down. Kong giving a nudge, but not bowing, and Godzilla placing his foot atop the dead Skullcrawler and blasting atomic breath in the air. Kong watches and walks away, and Godzilla returns to the sea. It is explained at the end sequence that while Kong will not submit to Godzilla, he lives with all the Titans on Skull Island, which is now dubbed the Monster Island. The Mothra triplets can be seen as well as the remaining Titans. Godzilla returns to live in the seas while Kong will not submit to Godzilla. Godzilla will not live under the rule of Kong. An understanding is placed between the two monsters as a ceasefire, so to speak. Godzilla will only return to answer to any threat and unbalance in the world, while the Titans are still answering to Godzilla. They will live with respect to Kong on the new Monster Island. An end credit scene shows Jonah Allen taking a Ghidorah DNA and inserting it into, and this is the only part I didn't change, but I meant to change that he's using the DNA as a way to start finishing Project Guardian. And that's it.